Hi class, we're going to kind of wind up things for week 4 with what might be considered some miscellaneous issues, but they're contemporary in nature, and the focus here will be really on the faith-based nonprofit organizations and some of the complications that can arise in terms of those, again, faith-based principles and stands and standards that are often part and parcel of organizations that are doing charitable work, educational work, and the like, and working with the public. And let me illustrate this to you and, of course, then make some connections. Before I took the position at Texas A&M International University, I was also a finalist for a position to direct a program at Santa Clara University in California. And during the interview process, perhaps it's the thing that didn't get me the gig, was that I made some offhand remark, because this is quite true, that traditionally many organizations, charitable in nature, tend to have hearts of gold, but are not necessarily managerially competent. And there is that aspect. I often made the remark, and did so during this interview, that you have the Little Sisters of the Poor or the Sisters of Mercy who do marvelous work, but might fall short in their administrative prowess and managerial skill sets, because those really are two different things. One can have great impulses to help people and not necessarily have great organizational skills. Those are two areas that are distinct skill sets. Well, one of the people I interviewed turned out to be taking exception to that, and informed exception, because he informed me in no uncertain terms that in the case of Catholic-based church organizations, when the parish is messed up, it's invariably because of the priests, and it's the Little Sisters of the Poor and it's the Sisters of Mercy who usually come in and clean that mess up. So lesson learned there. And in fact, that kind of leads to the idea of church administration, and it's a species of nonprofit administration, of course. And it's an interesting one, because I went on to learn that in the case of churches, these are very large operations, because you have not only your parishioners and the church itself, but you often have these ancillary aspects, such as a charitable role and a public role, where you have, say, the church hall. And this is where it gets tricky, and this is where I learned that in the case of the U.S. Catholic Church, there's basically only 2 areas that people can learn church administration. And one of them is some nun out of Pennsylvania who goes all over the country to educate various parishes about what they can and cannot do as nonprofit organizations, because religious organizations are under IRS code exempt, but there are aspects that come under the 501c3 designation. They are charitable organizations, obviously. And here's where it gets tricky. For example, if you have a parish hall, and if you open that hall for public events, let's say you rent it out, it can be bingo nights, it can be dances, it can be let's say the Catholic school, same thing, as an auditorium or a hall that is occasionally lent out for public use. And again, dances or concerts, that kind of thing, plays. Well, any church space that is used for public purposes has to conform to certain laws, including, for example, ADA. They have to be accessible to the disabled. Churches themselves may be exempt from that, but a parish hall that is used for public purposes had better have a ramp or an elevator or other means for disabled people to enter. Also, and this gets into, I think, contemporary times in light of recent rulings. Let's say you have a parish hall, and this is somewhat unlikely, a little bit of a stretch, but it's still plausible, where if you are, and again, it doesn't have to be a Catholic church, it can be other denominations, but if you are, again, using that space frequently for public events, and it conforms to public laws, again, it comes under a different designation than the straight church exemptions. Then there are times when you do lose some discretion as to what those purposes are. And here I'm getting to the idea of gay marriage. It is unlikely that a parish hall would be used for such purposes, but it is not a foregone conclusion because, again, if it's primarily a public space, then it comes under those rules, and that includes non-discrimination. So it'll be interesting to see. This all has to be sorted out, of course, but these are some of the areas that you should be aware of if you're involved with a faith-based organization, what they can or cannot do. Obviously, the religious spaces, the spaces where religious events occur are under church exemptions, and there are First Amendment protections, of course, about the practice of religion, and that can extend to an exclusionary role. But if you have a space that is owned by the church but is otherwise used by the public, those exemptions do not exist. So I just wanted to bring that up. It's an area that is little known, but needs to be addressed. And so with that in mind, that kind of concludes our week 4 series of lecturettes. And I do look forward to your next set of essays that can be based upon, well, actually it will be based upon reading material. But we are then now entering into week 5. I will be putting out a final exam study guide a little bit later in the week. And then our final exam, of course, comes right at the end. So we do have quite a bit more ground to cover. There are some heavy readings to attend to. The study guide will help, I think, focus those readings. So pay attention to those. And as always, if you have any questions, you can always email me. Okay, thank you.